In the ancient city of Jerusalem, beneath the shadow of Roman rule and amidst the bustling crowds gathered for Passover, a singular event was about to unfold, one that would forever alter the course of history. The air was thick with anticipation, tension, and a sense of foreboding, as if all creation was holding its breath. It is here, in these charged moments leading up to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ on Golgotha, that we find ourselves invited to step beyond the surface of the story and into its very heart. The city was alive with pilgrims from every corner of the Jewish world, each one drawn by the sacred festival. Yet as the sun rose over Jerusalem, a different procession was quietly taking shape. In the upper room, Jesus and his disciples had shared a final meal, a Passover supper that would become known as the Last Supper. Here bread was broken and wine poured, symbols of a new covenant that none yet fully understood. Jesus spoke of sacrifice and love, washing the feet of his followers in a gesture of humility that confounded them. In these intimate moments, he revealed the depth of his mission, not to conquer by force, but to redeem through suffering. As the meal ended, the group moved out into the night, crossing the Kidron Valley to the Garden of Gethsemane. The olive trees stood as silent witnesses to the agony that would unfold beneath their branches. Here Jesus withdrew to pray, his soul overwhelmed with sorrow. He pleaded with his Father, "If it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." The emotional weight of what lay ahead pressed upon him so intensely that his sweat became like drops of blood. In this garden, the divine and human natures of Christ converged, his willingness to submit to the Father's plan even as he faced unimaginable pain. Meanwhile, the city's religious leaders, threatened by Jesus' teachings and popularity, had conspired with Judas Iscariot. For 30 pieces of silver, Judas agreed to betray his master. Soldiers, armed with swords and clubs, soon arrived in Gethsemane. With a kiss, Judas identified Jesus, and the Son of Man was taken into custody. The disciples, confused and fearful, scattered into the darkness. Jesus was led first to the house of Annas, then to Caiaphas the high priest, where he faced a hurried, illegal trial under cover of night. False witnesses were brought forth, their testimonies conflicting. Yet, when asked if he was the Messiah, the Son of God, Jesus answered plainly. His declaration was met with outrage. He was accused of blasphemy, deserving of death according to the law. The religious leaders, however, lacked the authority to carry out execution under Roman occupation. At dawn, they brought Jesus before Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. Pilate, a man caught between political expediency and his own sense of justice, questioned Jesus. He found no fault in him, yet the crowd, stirred by the chief priests, clamored for crucifixion. Pilate offered a choice: release Jesus or Barabbas, a notorious prisoner. The crowd, manipulated and frenzied, chose Barabbas. Pilate, washing his hands of the matter, handed Jesus over to be scourged and crucified. The physical preparation for crucifixion was brutal. Roman soldiers stripped Jesus and flogged him with a whip embedded with bone and metal, tearing flesh and muscle. A crown of thorns was pressed onto his head, mocking his claim to kingship. Cloaked in a purple robe, he was jeered and spat upon. The weight of the crossbeam was then placed upon his shoulders, and Jesus was forced to carry it through the streets, stumbling under its burden. The path, known as the Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering, was lined with onlookers, some weeping, others indifferent or hostile. Along the way, Simon of Cyrene was compelled to help Jesus carry the cross, a reminder that even in his darkest hour, Jesus' suffering was shared by others. Women of Jerusalem mourned for him, and Jesus, battered and bleeding, paused to speak words of warning and compassion to them. His concern, even in agony, was for others. Arriving at Golgotha, the place of the skull, Jesus was laid upon the rough wood. Iron spikes were driven through his wrists and feet, affixing him to the cross. The cross was lifted and dropped into its socket, sending shocks of pain through his body. Around him, the soldiers cast lots for his garments, fulfilling ancient prophecies. Inscribed above his head was the charge, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." Yet, the physical torment was only one dimension of his suffering. Spiritually, Jesus bore the weight of humanity's sin. The one who knew no sin became sin for us, experiencing separation from the Father, a mystery so profound that, in his agony, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" In these words, the depth of his sacrifice is laid bare. On Golgotha, love was proven through pain. The cross, an instrument of shame and death, became a symbol of hope and redemption. The sky darkened, the earth trembled, and the temple veil was torn in two, signifying that the barrier between God and humanity had been removed. Jesus, with his final breath, declared, "It is finished." In that moment, the story of salvation was sealed. The crucifixion of Jesus Christ was not merely a historical event. It was the culmination of divine purpose, foretold by prophets and anticipated through centuries. The emotional anguish, physical agony, and spiritual weight borne on Golgotha reveal the lengths to which God would go to reconcile his creation. Here, justice and mercy met, and love triumphed over sin and death. As we reflect on these moments leading up to the cross, we are invited not only to witness history, but to encounter the heart of the gospel. The story of Golgotha is not just about suffering, but about the immeasurable love that endured it. It calls us to remember, to be transformed, and to walk in the light of a sacrifice that changed the world forever. In the shadow of the cross, we find both the cost and the promise of redemption. The hill where Jesus was crucified stands as a timeless testament to faith, glory, and the enduring power of love. As the sun hung high over the hill called Golgotha, the world witnessed a moment that would echo through centuries, a moment when suffering and grace met in a single breath. Jesus, nailed to the cross, battered and bleeding, looked down upon those who had condemned, mocked, and crucified him. In the midst of unimaginable agony, he uttered words that would become a beacon of hope and a cornerstone of faith. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." These words, spoken at the threshold of death, were not merely a plea for mercy. They were a revelation of the very heart and mission of Jesus. In that instant, Jesus did not curse his persecutors, nor did he cry out for justice or vengeance. Instead, he turned his thoughts to forgiveness, interceding on behalf of those who were blind to the magnitude of their actions. This act of radical compassion stands as a testament to the depth of divine love, a love that transcends human understanding. To truly grasp the significance of Jesus' first words on the cross, we must consider the context in which they were spoken. Surrounded by jeering crowds, Roman soldiers, and religious leaders who had orchestrated his execution, Jesus faced a scene of hostility and rejection. The physical torment of crucifixion was matched only by the emotional and spiritual weight of betrayal and abandonment. Yet, even as he endured the worst that humanity could inflict, Jesus' response was not one of bitterness, but of boundless mercy. "Father, forgive them." With these words, Jesus addressed God as Father, reaffirming the intimate relationship that defined his earthly ministry. Even in suffering, he remained anchored in his identity as the beloved Son, trusting in the goodness and sovereignty of God. By appealing to the Father, Jesus modeled for us a posture of dependence and surrender, inviting us to approach God with our pain, our questions, and our hopes. But the heart of this prayer lies in the call for forgiveness. Forgiveness is at the core of the Christian message, yet it is often misunderstood or taken for granted. In the ancient world, forgiveness was not the norm. Retribution and revenge were the expected responses to wrongdoing. By asking the Father to forgive those who crucified him, Jesus shattered conventional wisdom and introduced a new way of being, a way marked by grace and reconciliation. This act of forgiveness was not limited to those present at Calvary. In a real sense, Jesus' prayer extended beyond the Roman soldiers and religious leaders, reaching across time and space to encompass all of humanity. The words, "They do not know what they are doing," speak to the ignorance and brokenness that characterize the human condition. We, too, often act without understanding, hurting others and ourselves in ways we cannot fully comprehend. Yet, in His mercy, Jesus intercedes for us, offering forgiveness even when we are unaware of our need for it. The significance of these words is further magnified when we consider their fulfillment. Throughout His ministry, Jesus taught about forgiveness, not just as a moral ideal, but as a lived reality. He instructed His followers to love their enemies, to pray for those who persecuted them, and to forgive without limit. On the cross, Jesus embodied these teachings, demonstrating that forgiveness is not a passive sentiment, but an active choice, a costly, sacrificial act that flows from the depths of divine love. In forgiving His executioners, Jesus also revealed the nature of God's kingdom. The kingdoms of this world are built on power, domination, and retribution. But the kingdom Jesus proclaimed is founded on mercy, humility, and self-giving love. By forgiving those who wronged Him, Jesus inaugurated a new order, inviting all people to participate in the life of God, a life marked by compassion, reconciliation, and peace. Moreover, these words challenge us to examine our own hearts. In a world marked by conflict, division, and injustice, the call to forgive can feel impossible. We carry wounds, some inflicted by others, some self-inflicted, that seem too deep to heal. Yet, Jesus' example reminds us that forgiveness is not about minimizing pain or excusing wrongdoing. It is about releasing the hold that bitterness and resentment have on our lives and entrusting our wounds to the God who heals. Forgiveness is not easy. It requires courage, humility, and a willingness to let go of our desire for retribution. But it is also liberating, opening the door to healing and transformation. When we forgive, we participate in the very life of Christ, allowing His love to flow through us to others. In doing so, we become agents of reconciliation in a fractured world, bearing witness to the power of grace. The words, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing," also invite us to reflect on the mystery of human ignorance. So often we act out of fear, prejudice, or misunderstanding, failing to see the image of God in those around us. Jesus' prayer acknowledges this reality, yet it does not excuse it. Instead, it calls us to greater awareness and compassion, urging us to see others through the eyes of mercy. Ultimately, the significance of Jesus' first words on the cross lies in their revelation of God's heart. In that moment of supreme suffering, we see a love that refuses to be overcome by evil, a love that absorbs pain and responds with forgiveness. This is the love that lies at the center of the Christian faith, the love that conquers sin and death, the love that invites us to a new way of living. As we contemplate these words, may we be drawn into the mystery of divine forgiveness. May we receive the grace that Jesus offers, and may we extend that grace to others. In a world longing for healing and hope, let us remember the power of forgiveness, a power that flows from the cross, transforming lives and renewing hearts. Join us as we continue to explore the depths of faith, seeking to embody the love and compassion that Jesus demonstrated on Calvary. In His first utterance at the cross, we find not only a message for His executioners, but a message for us all, a message that invites us to forgiveness, to healing, and to the abundant life that God desires for each of us.
Thank you for watching this video. If you found the content meaningful, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Faith and Glory channel so you won't miss out on more inspiring videos about faith and life values. See you in the next video!